I'm not electronically smart. Please come down. I don't like the Lone Ranger up there. Come down, join us. We're a happy group. Come down, way down here. Okay, now that I scolded everybody. Oh, I won't touch that. Okay. I was very shocked today. This is for class business, because when I asked to see how many people handed in their 5 field trips, we have about 30 students who haven't handed in field trips. And I want those field trips. I said the deadline was 29. Now I'm giving you one more day. If they're not in by this Friday, you lose a half a point in your final grade. Okay? That's the most important thing. I'm really surprised. You have to go out there and do your field trips, hand in your reports, because you've got to get out there and know what's going on. You have a 27 field trip list, and at least you can pick 5. And there's excitement out there. You've got to be curious about everything in life, because you're in the fashion, marketing, merchandising, designing, the most revolutionary, evolutionary field in the world, which Mr. Rosen will tell you more about. I heard him give you advice. My goodness, I wish someone had talked to me like that when I first started and I was in school. You're very fortunate and very lucky to have his presence here. I'm going to say a few words about who he is. First of all, I know Andrew's father, Carl Rosen. I had met his grandfather even. They were their icons, their symbols of what human beings should be like. Great philanthropists, giving money, donating to everything. The most recent one, I have a poster outside. Carl, with Diane von Furstenberg, presented a $1 million donation to relief for Haiti. That's most recently. That appeared in Women's Wear Daily, April 15th. How many of you read Women's Wear Daily? Raise your hand. You better. It's the fashion Bible. You may not agree with everything, you don't have to, but you should read it, because all the news of what's going on in your industry, who's in, who's out, is there. Okay, I don't want to take any more time. I would like to speak about Andrew. He is absolutely one of the most brilliant, words fail me, he's fabulous. He's fabulous. And he was born in Massachusetts, of all places. Is that what happened to you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And of course, I mentioned he's the 3rd generation of fashion leaders. His grandfather, Arthur, founded Puritan Fashion, which was the most revolutionary, inventive, marketed fashion at that time. It was in 1910. That was his grandpa. And his father licensed programs for Diane von Furstenberg. His father was Carl Rosen, very well known in our industry. And he was president of Calvin Klein, too, and Anne Klein. And the grandson, Andrew, he followed with the brilliance of his forebears and founded Theory, because he didn't want to continue in Puritan or the pay. He knew it was time to move on and do a contemporary, forward-looking sportswear company, which he did. And that's, if I stay here anymore, I'll talk too much, so I'm going to ask my dear Andrew to take this away from me.
All right.
Okay?
I'm going to sit over here. It's all right if I sit here. So do you need me to use this, or I do need to use it. Everybody else probably sits on the podium and talks to you from the podium, right? So I can sit here, I can be a little different. Anyway, so as Alice had said, that I come from a, oh, yes. Yeah, we can speak after. But I'm going to speak about overseas business anyway because I think it's very important. No, it's fine. It's fine. We're going to speak after. Okay. All right. So, yes, I was fortunate enough to not have to reinvent myself. That my grandfather started in 1910 in the clothing business. My father after him, and I went to work for my dad, as I said to you guys earlier, 1997. So I've been doing this for 33 years. And when I first went to work for my dad, I then became the CEO of my dad's company after my dad passed away in 1983. And I was 25 years old. And my dad was the licensee for Calvin Klein jeans and had a $250 million New York Stock Exchange public company. And so I, at 25 years old, became the CEO of this company, and probably now I can admit that I was ill-equipped to do that, even though when I was 25 years old I didn't think I was ill-equipped to do anything, but probably at that time I was ill-equipped to do it. And a couple of years later, Calvin Klein and his partner, Barry Schwartz, bought the company, and I went to work for that company from at one time being the CEO to just running one of the different companies. And I guess at that time I could have made the decision that, and Calvin and Barry bought the company because they decided that no 26-year-old kids should determine their fate and run their business. So it was a very public, very sort of horrible, hostile thing. And I, at that time, could have left and gone to work for another company, but decided that I was going to stay there and I was going to prove to them and to maybe a few other people that I was the right guy for the job. And I stayed there for 4 more years, and I ultimately became president of the company again. And so that made me feel very good, and it also made me feel that I didn't want anything to do with them anymore, because why they would do this, they said that I was no good when I was 26 years old, and by the time I was 29 years old I was good enough to run the company. But I was young and didn't really understand all that stuff then. But anyway, I left and became the CEO of Anne Klein and worked for Anne Klein for 6 years. And Anne Klein at that time was a pretty big company, and it was filled with lots of politics and lots of stuff, and I didn't really like all that, and I had all this politics at Calvin Klein, and so I was getting a little bit disillusioned with big corporate business, and the owners of Anne Klein did me a favor and they fired me. And when I say they did me a favor and fired me, it was actually a good thing, because I didn't really enjoy what I was doing anymore anyway, and I needed to get on with my life and do something different. And I probably, if they never fired me, I never would have got on and done something different. And the reason they fired me was I wanted to do something different with Anne Klein that they didn't want me to do. And so I got fired, which, you know, maybe back in 1995 when this happened, I wouldn't sit there and say I got fired, but today it's very easy for me to sit here and say that I got fired. And I basically went on one interview, and I decided that this was never going to work for me, and met up with a guy by the name of Eli Tahari, and started Theory. And I started Theory because I wanted to create a company that I felt addressed the needs of the modern woman. And I felt that companies at that time weren't addressing the needs of the modern woman. They were making clothes that were geared towards another era, another lifestyle. And in 1990, this was 1996, in 1996 was the beginning of the internet and cell phones and all of this kind of stuff, when all of a sudden people's lives were going to change dramatically. And we're going to talk a little bit more about, I think 2010 is a whole nother time where business and things are going to change dramatically, and there are opportunities, and I want to talk to you about them. But in 1996, people no longer needed to be locked to their offices. They could do their work from wherever they were, because there were cell phones, there was internet, the whole communication channel in life changed. I mean, imagine not having a cell phone, not having email, not having texting, not having any of that stuff. That's what life was like, by the way. Life was like that in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94. I think 95, 96, all of this started to change. But life was really completely different. So if you want to call your friends, you had to go to a phone and pick up a phone and hope they were there. You know, it was not like it is today. So imagine the difference of having the freedom that created. Well, that created an opportunity for clothing, and the kind of clothing people needed, and people's lifestyle were going to change, so the clothing they needed changed, and that's really why I started Theory, and the premise that I started Theory on, that people's lives were going to change. And most companies were so set in their ways and had so much invested in the old business that they couldn't get into the new business. And what the old business was all about, making clothing that was coordinated outfits, so that if you bought this pair of pants, you had to buy this shirt and this jacket to go with it. They didn't think of clothing as individual pieces that could be mixed and matched within a wardrobe. They thought of clothing as outfits. And the reason they thought of clothing as outfits was that they thought they could sell more. Because if they had to buy one piece, they had to buy three pieces. It was not my philosophy at all. My philosophy was, I want to make clothes that were individual pieces. I wanted to make clothes that became a part of a woman's wardrobe and could be mixed and matched throughout a woman's wardrobe, and be as versatile as her lifestyle. And, you know, have great jackets and great shirts and great pants, and they could just work with anything. And the other thing that I did, which was also at the same time as was happening, was that the fabric mills were starting to develop all sorts of advanced fabric with Lycra in them. And fabric with Lycra, you know, it gave the fabric the ability to expand and contract. And because it gave the fabric, the fabric expanded and contracted, a basic pair of pants no longer looked basic anymore. The shape and proportion of that pair of pants was totally different, because it could fit much closer to the body. It could have much, the fabric had such different characteristics that I decided that I wanted to be the expert in that business, and I wanted to make clothing with only fabrics from Lycra. So not only could the cut of the pants, the cut of the shirts, the cut of the jackets, everything changed. The whole silhouette changed. But again, most people were working in fabrics that didn't stretch, and I could create a whole modern-looking clothing out of this fabric with Lycra, individual pieces. And right away, although people thought I was crazy going from these big corporate companies and all this power to starting a little company with 4 or 5 people, and you know, but right away the company grew very rapidly. And the first year we did $6 million. The second year we did $20 million. The third year we did over $40 million, and so on and so forth. And one of the reasons that happened was that, remember, I was 39 years old. I had, you know, 22 years of experience in the industry. I wasn't starting fresh out of school. I had a lot of stuff in the bank to draw from, and I could be strategic and smart and knew what all that meant. I just didn't, and I still had the passion to create something new and exciting, and so on. So from there, the company grew very rapidly, and I decided that what I wanted to do was to create in the contemporary space. The contemporary space, everyone understands the whole sort of pyramid of pricing of clothes, and designer clothes, and contemporary clothes, and vertical retailers, and so on. You guys all understand that. So I felt that I could create in the contemporary space what a company like Louis Vuitton or Prada or Gucci had done in the designer space, and I could own a bunch of different companies and control a big part of the space, and I could be an authority to the retailers around the world on the contemporary marketplace. And so I then started investing myself personally in other companies. I invested in Alice and Olivia. I invested in Joie. I invested in Rag and Bone, Isley, Griffin, Kiki de Montparnasse. Some you know, some you don't know. Some I sold before because I didn't really like the way they were going, or I didn't like the partners I was with. So I wanted to have a lot of different companies within the contemporary marketplace, and as I say, be an authority. And also, I felt that the strength of the American design was in this contemporary marketplace, and that was the voice that the contemporary market could have to the rest of the world. I thought it was too difficult to compete at a designer level because the European design houses had so much more leverage and so much more resources and so on. I had to find a space where I could be relevant and I could compete in an important way, and was in the contemporary marketplace and was able to develop a business that resonated not only in the U.S. but globally. And the business grew a lot, and I was fortunate enough to sell the company. And I ultimately sold the company to Fast Retailing, which owns Uniqlo. All of you guys are familiar with Uniqlo, right? Cool store. So Fast Retailing is the company that I sold my business to, and I only sold my theory business and my Helmut Lang business. I didn't talk to you about Helmut Lang, but also bought Helmut Lang from Prada and started it up again. And I sold those two businesses to the Japanese company, Fast Retailing, and maintained the rest of my businesses, which are Rag and Bone, Alice and Olivia, Griffin, Kiki de Montparnasse, which I have myself. So today I operate for the Japanese Theory and Helmut Lang, and I have my own personal investments in these various other companies. And the reason I like to do that is that it keeps me very fresh, and I am always open to meeting young designers, new designers, because it keeps me current with what's going on. You never know where the next good idea is. I mean, it happened to be that I invested in Alice and Olivia because I met some girl wanted to build a website for me, and that was the girl that ended up starting Alice and Olivia. And when she wanted to start a business, she came to me for advice, and I invested in it. The Rag and Bone guys I met because I was looking for designers for Helmut Lang, and I didn't think they were right for Helmut Lang, but I thought it was a good company to invest in, and so on and so forth. So I end up being very open and curious about young people in our industry and their ideas, and as I say, it keeps me very relevant and keeps me on the forefront of what's going on. And I am also on the committee for the Vogue Fashion Fund. All of you guys know what the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund, where they fund young designers. So I get to meet a lot of young designers that way, and am very involved in helping them. And I do that for two reasons. One, when I was young, I got great advice and became sort of got my knowledge from people that had experience and were in the industry a long time and mentored me. And I think that, that would be something that I could help young people with, and also because it's inspiring to meet young people with fresh ideas. So now I wanted to talk about what I think is the next generation of the industry. And you guys are young, you guys are getting a great education here at FIT, and you're going to be going out into the world and looking for forge your careers. And careers are not made up of a series of successes. Sometimes you have successes and sometimes you have failures. As I described to you, my career certainly wasn't made up of all successes. And it takes a while till you gain all your experience and knowledge, and it takes a while till you also find the right place for yourself and where you feel comfortable and where you can work. And because I maybe wasn't good enough to work at Anne Klein doesn't mean that I wasn't a good person and couldn't be a success someplace else. It just wasn't the right environment for me. And so I say to you that as you guys get out and start your career, I don't advise that you go in and start up your own company as the first thing you do. I advise that you get some practice with someone else's money and someone else's company, and you get some experience that way. And the other thing is that I think there are two areas that one needs to get involved in. And the two areas that one needs to get involved in, I'm not so much, we're going to have, because a lot of you guys are design students, so we're going to have to talk about how these two areas affect the design students, but really as the merchandising students. So the one area that everyone knows about is this whole international business. And when I started back in the 70s, there was no concept of international business. You just did business in America. And even in the 90s when I started Theory, it was really still just about business in America. There was a little bit of business outside of America. Part of the reason that there wasn't business outside of America is there was all sorts of duties and tariffs, and it was very difficult. Most countries were very insulated. And I think with the advent of the of communication and the internet and so on, the world has gotten very small, and people all over the world can be reading the same thing at the same time. And so what happened was business became global, and all of the companies started to do business all over the world. And now for European companies, that was always natural. European companies, they did business in America, they did business in the Far East, they did business everywhere. But American companies really stuck to America business because there was so much business to do. And most of the American companies, what they did is they had a high price line, and then they had a lower price line, and then a lower price line, and then an outlet line. And they were you look at Ralph Lauren, there's so many lines, or Donna Karan, there's so many lines, who the hell knows what is what. And in my opinion, that was cannibalizing their business because they were just milking the business from America, and they weren't thinking about the business on a global basis. Today, you have to think about business on a global basis, and I think that anyone that is going to get in business, one area to get into business is on doing business globally and get involved in international business and so on. And a company like Uniqlo or Fast Retailing is a great company because their whole initiative is about building a business globally. And they have stores all over the world. And I think it's very important for anyone getting into the business to recognize that it is a global business, and that frankly, there isn't a lot of people that have a lot of experience in that. So you're getting started in that segment of the business at the same time as most everyone else in America. The other business that one has to get into, which again, this is no mystery to anyone, right, is doing business online and through all the various manifestations of social networking and media and all that kind of stuff. And that is an area that everyone is starting at zero from. That is really everyone starting at zero. And in my opinion, 5 years from now, the whole landscape of department stores and retailing will have changed so dramatically that we wouldn't even believe. And in my opinion, the future of I'm not saying department stores are going away, but the type of department store retailing that is going to exist 5 and 10 years from now is 360 degrees different from what's happening now. And, so my opinion is it's a great opportunity to get into the next generation of business. That next generation of business is going to be done online. It is not going to be done in a traditional way in advertising in magazines and coming to a store to shop and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying 100% of the customer is going to be shopping differently, but a large enough percentage of the customer is going to be shopping differently that you're going to see the landscape change dramatically. And it's interesting because if I describe to you what department store retailing was like in the 70s, you would say to me, you're crazy. And if I described to you what it was like in the 90s, you would say to me, no, it can't be. So the evolution of how things change is very, very slow and evolutionary. But when you look back on it, it's amazing. It's like, the old adage, if you gained a pound a month, it wouldn't seem like that much. But at the end of 12 months, you'd have gained a lot of weight. That's what's happening with our world. It is evolving every single minute of every single hour of every single day, and unless you're prepared and open to be evolving with it, you're going to get left behind. And as a company, I have to constantly be evolving and moving forward. I can't stay stuck in where I am, because if I stay stuck in where I am, the world is going to pass me by. And I think for you guys, there is a whole new generation of business that is happening, both internationally and electronically, that you guys can be on the forefront of and be at the same place that everyone else is starting out. And that's the era that I think we're in. Anyway, so before I do all the talking, why don't we if any of you guys have some questions, maybe you can start some dialogue. So, like, I always try to, as having a brand, you always, the brand has a aesthetic, the brand has a culture. I mean, most importantly thing in having a company is having a culture in the company and having an aesthetic that the company operates in. So you have to have both the culture and aesthetic that a company operates in. I'd say two of the most important things. And if you have an aesthetic and you have a culture, and people come to your brand or your company because they also subscribe to or believe in or feel it's appropriate for them, their aesthetic and culture, your aesthetic and culture. And so I try to do things that are relevant to the people I'm speaking to and that will resonate with the audience that I'm speaking to in the company. And whether it's in theory it's one way, in Helmut Lang it's a different thing, in Rag and Bone it's a third, and Alice and Olivia. So the Icon Project for me was a way to create some relevance around what our brand stood for and what our brand represented, and that people who hopefully wanted to buy our clothes would get inspired from. And now we're doing something that sort of has evolved from the Icon project to this whole Fashion Insider thing. And what I have done is got a whole bunch of stylists that work for different magazines and photographers and celebrities and so on, and have them come into theory and style the clothes in their perspective. So to take a jacket like this and style it in by 3 or 4 different people, it's gonna have different meanings or different ways of wearing it, and show the versatility of the clothes. The whole concept is to show the versatility of the clothes. Yeah. That wouldn't be my answer. Okay, so anyway, in the old days, if you asked 10 people in my company the same question, you'd get the same answer. It isn't good when people in my company answer the same question differently, because that means the company wouldn't be all working together. There would be a big disconnect in the company. And I guess that's what happens when big corporations buy companies, and stuff like that happens, because maybe the leadership gets weaker. So that would be my problem, that that they're not answering the question correctly. But the correct answer to the question is that I have a very specific customer in mind, and I have a very specific point of view as to the aesthetic of the clothes and the lifestyle of the clothes that we as a company create and what we stand for. And I want to appeal to the modern, intelligent man or woman that wants clothes that are discerning, that has a specific fit and a specific feel to it. I'm not making clothes like a lot of these vertical retailers make clothes, where they're trying to have a big net out there and catch everyone. That has more of a generic fit and a generic fabric and a generic feel to it. My clothes would have a very specific fit, feel, and look to them that would be geared towards the modern man or woman. Maybe a different answer than you got in my place. I'm going to have to deal with that. Yeah, but I don't believe that you try and fit everyone. Because I think if you try to be, I work with our design a lot and so on, and our merchandisers, and I always want them to be very specific about what they're doing. I don't want them to be general. Now, if you're making cheaper clothes and you're trying to appeal, I'm not making clothes to appeal to everyone in this room. And, certain people will really embrace the aesthetic and really embrace the lifestyle and the look and feel of our clothes, and other people won't. That's okay with me. But I want to really nail it for those people who it's for. I don't want to maybe get it right for them. I want to have them totally fall in love with it. And, interestingly enough, when I started the company, so here was the thing I didn't mention, but when I started the company, so I've been around for a long time, had a lot of experience, had a lot of confidence, and everyone said to me, oh, well, you got to get PR and you got to advertise. How are people going to know about your clothes? And I made a very conscious decision not to do any of that, because whatever money I had, I wanted to invest in the fit and the feel of the clothing that I was making, so that when some woman tried it on, that she absolutely fell in love with it because the way it fit and feel. So all of the effort, all of the energy of my entire company was put on what the clothes fit and felt like at the end of the day, and not about what celebrity was wearing them and what magazine they were in and so on and so forth. I knew that I could sell the clothes. I knew I could get the clothes positioned in a store for people to see them, and I wanted to make sure that when people wore them or put them on, that they were inspired by them. And it's very funny because I never advertised, I never did any of that, and whenever I would meet people when I was first starting out in the company, and I would say, oh, I have this company called Theory. Oh, yeah, those are the ones with the incredible fabrics and the amazing fit. So, sometimes it's, you just got to, you got to pick your point of entry into the market. You got to pick your strategy and the culture and of your company, and it's, in my opinion, it's got to be specific. You can't do a little of this and a little of that. You can only do a few things, and you got to do them well. And the other thing is, when I started my company, or any of the companies that I started, I didn't start with a whole collection of clothes. I started with a very specific category and statement of clothes. So when I started Theory, I had 8 or 10 pair of pants and 2 tops, all made out of fabrics with Lycra. Very specific what I was doing. It wasn't a whole collection of clothes. Over time, as I got the authority from the consumer and the confidence of the retailer, I was able to broaden out the assortment of clothes that I made. Then I added jackets, and then I added sweaters, and so on and so forth. But I did that after I had already established a authority with the consumer and a confidence with the retailer. Because trying to make a whole line of clothes is not easy. And I want to make the clothes fit well. I wanted to make the clothes relevant for a woman's lifestyle, or the modern woman's lifestyle. So I would be, I'm about 75% happy with the clothes, not 100%. Helmut Lang, I'm 100%. You guys see Helmut Lang? It's good, really good. Very specific. It's forward. It's it's inspiring. Not for everybody, but I don't believe you have to make clothes for everybody. I mean, it's a big world out there, and you just have to appeal to a small segment of the population.
Questions, stand up so we can hear you.
Okay, so I think one of the other things that's really important is you have to be realistic, right? You can't get deluded with your own success or importance or whatever. So it's always good to be grounded and understand reality. And the reality for me is that Theory is about 75% right. It's not as good as it could be. There's a little bit of a disconnect in the clothes to the vision, and it sort of speaks to what she's saying. My designers and merchandisers are trying to make clothes for everybody, some of this and some of that and some of the other thing, instead of being very specific and have a very strong point of view with a fit and quality that stands for something. And I think we're a little generic right now. Yeah. Okay, so this is a good question. Okay, so let me. Okay, so here's the thing. So if you remember what I said when I started the company, was that I was making clothes with fabrics with Lycra, and I could make really simple clothes look very modern because the fit and proportion totally became new and fresh because of the idea of the fabrics with Lycra. So for me, I believe trends are important, and today, if plaid shirts are selling, if you don't have plaid shirts, you're not going to do business. And if leggings are happening, you got to have leggings, but you got to have your version of leggings, and you got to have your version of plaid shirts. You can't have just whatever the trend is. So my opinion is that trends are important, but I don't believe that style sells clothes. I believe, and by the way, there's a lot of people that will disagree with me. I believe shape and proportion sells clothes. So and the feel of the clothes. So my whole philosophy is I want to make very simple clothes that have a very interesting and new shape, obviously on trend, that are easy to wear, comfortable to wear, sexy to wear, and a woman can mix and match them throughout her everyday life. I don't want to make occasion clothes. I don't want to make clothes that are going to make the pages of a fashion magazine and here today and gone tomorrow. My philosophy is to make clothes that are part of a woman's wardrobe, that have a modern, sexy look to them, that are totally on the edge but not over the edge, and I'm not making clothes that are necessarily for a specific moment in time. I like to make clothes that have a long life cycle because I want to make expensive clothes. And to make expensive clothes, there can be great value in them if you're wearing those clothes over a period of years a number of times. So you may say to me, oh, well, I went and bought something at BB or Topshop or Uniqlo, and it was the latest fashion, and I wore it twice, but I only paid $30 for it. Well, my clothes you may have paid $200 for, but instead of wearing it twice, you could have worn it for a good part of your the next 4 years. So to me, my clothes are more value than the Topshop clothes that you bought today and threw away tomorrow. That's just my opinion. Doesn't mean that, the beauty of our industry is that lots of different ways work, right? My way isn't the only way. And it just happens to be my way and what I believe in and what I hopefully build the company around. And, you sit here and you talk to Diane von Furstenberg, she may have a totally different way. That doesn't make her wrong and me right, or vice versa. It's just, it's the freedom of our industry that our industry allows. The one thing that you will see will be similar between Diane von Furstenberg and myself will be that we both have a point of view about what our company stands for. That's the thing that you can't. Everyone successful is going to have that. And everyone successful is going to have created a culture and an aesthetic within their company. Those that don't won't be successful for very long. Okay, so you guys that are designers, what should you do, right? What would be the perfect training ground? So, one, I think you got to work at retail. Where that retail is, hopefully it's something or some place that you like the clothes. And I think you got to work, again, for a company who's makes the type of clothing that you want to make. So if you want to be in the jean business, you got to work for a jean company. If you want to be in the dress business, you got to work for a dress company. If you want to be in the sportswear business, you got to work for a sportswear company. If you don't know, pick one whose aesthetic you think you can relate to. But you got to work at retail, and you got to work and get experience with a big company who you respect. How do you do that? That's the difference. It's going to separate the ones that are successful from not, I guess. You know, it's in life, you know, you have to find a way to get where you want to get to. And it doesn't have to be a straight line, right? But you got to find a way to find the path that suits you, and you know, you've got to work hard to get there. But then, you know, not everyone in life has to lead. So it's a question of what suits you. And it doesn't all happen at one time, you know. I mean, I certainly myself would not have been capable of the things that I did when I was 40 years old when I was 25 years old. No way. If I had started my business when Calvin Klein came into and bought my father's company, and, you know, this 26-year-old kid can't run the company, I'm not going to rest my future on him, and I said, screw this, I'm going out and going to start my own business, I would have been a total failure. Yeah, maybe not total, but I wouldn't have succeeded probably. It wouldn't have ended up like it ended up. So.
With having so many different companies that you're working with, do you ever find it difficult to keep them completely separate from each other?
My whole philosophy is that I keep them separate, and everything is, you know, the way I have it, there's somebody that runs every company. So rather than me impose my perspective on them, I understand their perspective and then work within their sort of sandbox. So each company, there's a sandbox created that we work within, and I find a way or create a way for my philosophy and platform to work within their sandbox. But I don't believe that that all companies need to operate the exact same way. I think that there is, again, the culture and the aesthetic of the company and the sort of grassroots nature of all of that is what's most important. And good companies, you can feel the energy within them. And that is a natural energy that's created by the people that run them. So if I was going to run Rag & Bone or Alice and Olivia, the companies would be very different because they would have my energy. But since I'm not running them and someone else is, I have to understand their energy and work within that and sort of guide them. And you know, again, that's something that I've learned over, you know, the 30 years that I've been doing this. But, you know, sort of, I told you about my early career in the factories, the warehouse, and so on. So very shortly after that, when I went into New York into selling and so on, I moved up fairly quickly and was running my own business by the time I was 21 years old, or my own division of a company, and really have been sort of creating and perfecting what I do for the last 32 years, kind of. So, I mean, you know, now after trial and error, and believe me, I learn more from the failures than I do from the successes. And there's lots of things, like I do things wrong every day. And, you know, you hopefully, that's why I say it's important to live in reality. And when you make a mistake, it's okay to make a mistake, you know. The worst thing is not to be able to understand that you made a mistake, or hear that you made a mistake, or appreciate that you made a mistake. If you made a mistake, you made a mistake. It's okay, just don't make it again. And if you knew you made the mistake, there's a better chance you won't make it again. If you don't admit that you made the mistake, you'll probably make the same mistake again. Because the things that you do right, any of us do right, we do right naturally. And we will continually do them right. The things that we do wrong, pretty much we do them wrong naturally too. So unless we consciously want to change them, we don't. You know, it's like, you know, you have a boyfriend, you always make the same choice with the wrong boyfriend. Or if you make the choice with the right boyfriend, you usually make the choice with the right boyfriend. You know? Me, I probably make more wrong mistakes in that area than not, but now I made a good one. Good choice. Because I learned from my prior mistakes. Are all of them what? They're definitely all based in New York, because I couldn't be involved in them if they were in California or something else. So I try to, you know, when I get involved in a company, so A, I have to like the idea, and B, I have to believe in the people. So it's the people are almost more important. Like there's a lot of things that I've seen that I love the idea, that I think I could make a lot of money with, and I think could be really important, but the people would be a problem. I can't get involved with the wrong people.
You mentioned earlier that you had experience working in factories and others. I was just wondering if you had anything to say as far as overseas manufacturing and free trade and sustainable.
Okay, so sustainable stuff, right? So I'm all for us living in a better world, and I'm all for protecting what we have. But I think that at this moment in time, it's hard to be competitive doing only sustainable stuff, right? So I think that it's good to be aware of, but it's not yet a business that one can really be successful doing now. For a few years from now, will that change? Yes, probably. In terms of manufacturing, basically, I believe I'm not a low-cost manufacturer. So for me, I'm not going to the cheapest place to make my clothes. It really isn't. I don't even know how to do that. I'm going to the place where I can get the clothing made the way that it needs to be made, and I'll work out the price later. You know, I want, for me, the most important thing is when you put on a jacket or a pair of pants that you say, this is amazing. And so I'm more concerned with the quality than I am the price. And, you know, does that mean, again, that's just my perspective, right? So I manufacture a lot of clothes in the U.S. because I know I can make them well. I know I can make them quickly. I know I can, you know, it works for the company that I have set up. But, you know, lots of people are very successful making clothes all over the world at cheap prices. It's just not what I believe in, or not what I do well. I mean, maybe in my next life I'll come back as a cheap clothing manufacturer. Yeah.
So what is your motivation
So, sort of a good question. I guess that, you know, people always wonder why I still work, and my real job is a theory, right? I spend, you know, most of my time at theory. It's a full-time job for me. And why do I stay there when I don't own the company anymore? And clearly I own other companies and could have other places to go and so on and so forth. I guess I sort of ask myself that question too, but as long as I love coming to work and love what I do and get inspired by the work and inspired by the people that I'm working with, you know, that's enough for me. It's not really, I was fortunate enough that maybe when I started the company I didn't have so much money, but after I sold the company I had enough money that I didn't have to worry about things. And so now my motivation is not just purely about the money. The motivation is I want to be happy in my life. I want to be happy in my work, and you know, I want to enjoy myself. And I get inspired by doing new things. And I'd say before too long, I have a new idea that I'm going to be doing. Whether that new idea is in theory or outside of theory, I'm not sure of yet. I hope it's inside of theory, but I believe that one has to address the changing marketplace and the changing nature of consumers' shopping patterns and so on. And I believe there's a next generation way to do things. I'm not going to tell you what that is because it wouldn't be fair. It's not. It just wouldn't be fair. So, yeah, so listen, so now this is an interesting point, right? So, the most creative designers don't necessarily have the most successful business. And, I think that in all of my work, I have to be creative, and I have to think outside the box, and I have to think ahead of what my competition is thinking. Why do I have to think ahead of my competition? Because I want to be better than the competition, because I want to be an authority in the marketplace that I do business. So to be an authority in the marketplace I do business in, I have to be creative, think ahead of the next guy. Because if all I'm doing is thinking on the same thing that you're thinking, it's not enough. I'm not, well, maybe you're an authority. But anyway, so I like to try and think ahead and think creatively. But one of the things that you have to look at is, if you look at all these designers that are very creative, and there's so many designers that are very creative and very talented, and then there are designers that are very creative and talented and successful. And one of the reasons that the creative and talented designers that are successful is they have somebody like me, or somebody who is able to channel all that creativity and all that innovation and all that stuff into something that's really marketable and scalable and everything else. So that all of the successful companies have not only someone who's very creative, but somebody who's very good in a business role. So if you looked at me against some of the creative minds in our industry, design-wise, I wouldn't even make the top 100, right? But, okay, so 99. But yet I have the understanding and the aesthetic and so on, and I also have the business acumen, so I can be able to put both of them together. But that only came from a lot of years of work and experience and so on and so forth. And, I was fortunate because you hear the expression that you start on third base. So I basically got the opportunity to start on third base. I mean, it doesn't mean that I couldn't have gone back to first base, but I sort of stayed at third. Everything. It's not only it's in every aspect of the industry. Those that are leading the industry are leading because they're the most creative. Look at Anna Wintour, probably the most powerful and most inspirational, one of the most inspirational figures in our industry. Incredibly creative. Look what she did with Fashion's Night Out. Look at what she's done with the Vogue Fashion Fund to help young designers and so on. Right? Look at Mickey Drexler in terms of what he's done. I don't know, did Mickey come to speak here? Is he? No. Oh. So look what Mickey has done with specialty retailing, first with The Gap and Banana Republic, now with J. Crew. So there's a lot of creativity in lots of different areas. You look at a store like Uniqlo, and Uniqlo, their creativity and expertise is in their execution. They're way ahead in execution because they're more inventive and creative in that area, and their ability to be able to manufacture incredible clothes at a fraction of the price that other people do. So you can buy a great cashmere sweater in there for $40. $39.99, or you can buy Jill Sander design clothes. I mean, it's incredible. So that's a form of creativity. So creativity happens in so many different ways. It just doesn't happen in design. You're good. Like for me, which would be different, right? Because 33 years of experience, so on and so forth. I use a lot of gut, but I also look at what the trend of business has been, what's working, and so on. So I'd say half and half, right? Most people would probably use, 80-20, 80 science, 20 whatever, but I sort of use 50-50. I mean, I'm always disaster checking things, and my form of disaster checking things is I would have a core group of people that I will bounce ideas off of. And, it wouldn't be that I would take anyone's opinion at 100% face value. But I'd sort of take it as their opinion, and I know what their strengths are, and I know what their weaknesses are, and I like to disaster check a lot of things. So I also think that it's good, like if you have an idea, I like to get all the people that are involved, the idea involves in the same room at the same time and discuss it, be able to understand people's reaction and weigh people's reaction and how I might adjust my plan based on, how it went over. And sometimes I just won't listen to anyone and just go with it, It doesn't mean that, there's a lot of smart people, and it doesn't mean that, sometimes they could just miss the idea. So sometimes you just have to go with it. I wouldn't necessarily be so inspired by any new fabrics that I've seen lately. The thing that I think, I'm always sort of feeling like, where's the next opportunity? So for me, I think there's a big opportunity in knitwear. I think that knitwear is the biggest underdeveloped segment of the business right now. It's just my opinion. I'm really sort of into knitwear. Knitwear being sweaters, cotton sew knits. I think I had this idea, I believe there's a great opportunity to have the designer version of American Apparel as a store, but to include sweaters and everything else. That's sort of a good idea.